Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, at what age do most people actually become millionaires? Not the YouTubers flashing Lamborghinis, not the billionaires flying to space for fun, but real, everyday people. The answer might surprise you, because while it feels like everyone and their dog is bragging about being a millionaire these days, the reality is very different. In fact, the truth might be a little uncomfortable. So let's strip away the hype, roll up our sleeves, and actually talk about the real numbers. Who makes it to 7 figures, when it usually happens, and why for most households, it never does. Now, before we dive into timelines, let's start with the basics. What even makes someone a millionaire? Technically, it's all about net worth. That's the sum of everything you own: your house, your retirement accounts, your car, your savings, minus everything you owe, like student loans, mortgages, or credit card debt. If what you own is worth more than what you owe, congratulations, that's your net worth. And if it crosses $1 million, you've officially joined the club. Sounds straightforward, right? Well, here's the first twist. According to Credit Suisse's Global Wealth Report, about 9% of adults in the US qualify as millionaires by this definition. That means 9 out of every 100 people walking past you at the grocery store or sitting in traffic technically have $1 million net worth. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But wait, before you start assuming millionaires are everywhere, there's a catch, and it's a big one. See, net worth includes home equity, and for a lot of so-called millionaires, that's where the bulk of their wealth is hiding. Maybe they bought a home in California decades ago for $200,000, and today it's worth $1.2 million. On paper, they're millionaires. But if their retirement account is practically empty and they're struggling to afford property taxes, are they really rich? Not exactly. This is why economists often make a distinction between total net worth millionaires and investable asset millionaires. Here's the difference.
A net worth millionaire might have everything tied up in their home or in illiquid assets like a family business or collectibles. Those are hard to sell quickly and often come with hidden costs. An investable asset millionaire, on the other hand, has at least $1 million in assets that can be easily converted to cash. Think savings, stocks, bonds, or retirement accounts. And here's the kicker. Only about 2% of US adults fall into that second category. Just 1 in 50 people. Much rarer than the casual, I'm a millionaire because my house went up in value status. So already, we can see that hitting 7 figures in a meaningful way is not as common as people think. Now, let's look at the timeline. When do most people actually reach this milestone? Well, the data is pretty clear. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the median net worth peaks between ages 65 and 74 at around $410,000. Yes, you heard that right, not $1 million, less than half of it. That means the typical household never even comes close to millionaire status, not even in their golden years. Think about that for a second. If you lined up 10 households in that age group, only a couple of them would have a net worth even approaching 7 figures. For the rest, retirement looks a lot leaner. And it gets even more sobering when you look at younger households. For those under 35, the median net worth is just $39,000. Between ages 35 and 44, it climbs to around $135,000. By 45 to 54, it's $247,000. Notice the pattern? It's rising, sure, but at no point does the typical household hit $1 million. So if you've ever felt like you're behind because you're not a millionaire yet, relax. You're not behind. You're actually in line with the majority. But of course, some people do make it. And here's where it gets interesting. The average age of a millionaire today is 61. That's later than you might expect, especially given how often social media glorifies the self-made millionaire at 30 story. Back in the 1980s, millionaires were hitting that status in their late 50s. So not only is it rare, it's actually happening later now than it used to. Why later? Inflation is part of it. $1 million in the 1980s bought you a whole lot more than it does today. But the bigger reason is how wealth builds over time. Spoiler alert,
It doesn't happen in a straight line. Wealth growth usually looks painfully slow in the beginning. In your 20s and early 30s, even if you're saving diligently, it feels like your investments are barely growing. Why? Because compounding hasn't had time to do its magic yet. It's like planting seeds. You don't see a forest in the first year, you see tiny sprouts. And that discourages a lot of people. They stop contributing, or worse, they cash out early because it isn't working. But here's the thing, those who stick with it, even when it feels pointless, are the ones who later look back and realize their accounts suddenly shot upward in their 50s and 60s. That's the power of compounding finally hitting its stride. Let's pause here and consider why most people never make it to 7 figures. One big reason, savings habits have changed. Back in the 1980s, the average household saved about 10% of their income. Today, it's closer to 5%, according to data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And in many cases, it's even less. Think about what that means. If someone makes $100,000 per year and saves 5%, that's $5,000. Now, out of that $5,000, they're expected to cover retirement, emergencies, vacations, and maybe a down payment for a home someday. It's just not enough. And it's not only lower income families. Studies show that about 1/3 of households earning $200,000 or more are still living paycheck to paycheck. So when you combine low savings rates with rising costs of living, expensive housing, and student debt, it makes perfect sense that millionaire status is getting harder to reach and happening later in life. But here's where it gets interesting. If becoming a millionaire is so rare, then who are the people actually pulling it off? You might expect it's mostly tech founders, CBOs, or lottery winners. But the truth is a little more down to earth. The most common careers among millionaires aren't flashy at all. They're jobs like engineers, accountants, and teachers. Yep, you heard me right, teachers. Why? Engineers often have stable, well-paying jobs and tend to think analytically, which makes them disciplined with money. Accountants, of course, see firsthand how money works, not just for themselves, but for others, giving them an advantage. And teachers, despite modest salaries, often build wealth slowly through pensions, steady contributions, and by simply living within their means. So no, you don't have to build the next Facebook to join the Millionaire Club. In fact, trying to get there with flashy shortcuts is often what keeps people broke. Now, let's pull back and look at the big picture. The millionaire milestone, while rare, is not impossible. But for most people who reach it, it doesn't happen until much later in life. And here's the takeaway so far. If you're not there yet, that's normal. The average millionaire is in their 60s. The typical household never gets there at all. And those who do, it's usually the result of decades, not years, of consistent saving and investing. In part 2, we'll dig deeper into why compounding takes so long to kick in, what mistakes most people make along the way, and what you can do right now to avoid falling into the trap of quitting too early. Because trust me, that's where most people go wrong. So here's the million-dollar question. Literally, if the average millionaire doesn't hit that mark until their 60s, what exactly happens in those decades in between? Why does it take so long? And what separates those who make it from those who don't? The short answer? Compounding. Now, before your eyes glaze over at that word, let's break it down in plain English. Compounding is just your money earning money, and then that new money earning more money. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it's small, and you wonder why you're even bothering. But as it keeps rolling, it grows faster and faster until suddenly it's this massive thing you can't stop, even if you wanted to. Here's the catch. Most people stop pushing their snowball way too early. In the early years of saving, it feels discouraging. You put away $5,000, and a year later, it's $5,200. Whoop-de-doo. You're not buying a yacht with that. But give it time, and the picture changes dramatically. After 20 or 30 years, that same account isn't just creeping up, it's exploding. For example, let's say you invest $500 a month starting at age 25. at a 7% average annual return, which is roughly what the S&P 500 has delivered after inflation over long stretches, you'd have about $1.2 million by age 65. And that's without doing anything fancy, just consistent saving and letting compounding work. But if you wait until age 35 to start, suddenly the ending balance drops to about $565,000. Same contributions, just 10 years later, and you've cut your retirement nest egg in half. That's the cruel math of compounding. It rewards patience and punishes procrastination. So why don't more people stick with it? Well, life happens. Student loans, mortgages, medical bills, car repairs, kids. And on top of that, the culture we live in doesn't exactly encourage patience. Everything is about instant gratification. You can order a package and have it on your doorstep in hours. You can scroll through TikTok and get a dopamine hit in seconds. Saving for 30 years? That doesn't exactly trend on social media. And then there's the market itself. Stocks don't go straight up. They go up, they go down, they go sideways. And when markets crash, as they did in 2008 or in early 2020, people panic. They see their account balances dropping and think, well, this clearly isn't working, and they sell, which is basically like rolling your snowball halfway up the hill and then letting it melt in the sun. Here's a stat that might surprise you. According to Fidelity, the best performing retirement accounts are often owned by people who forgot they had them, literally. They didn't panic during downturns because they weren't even watching. And because they left their money alone, compounding did its job. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. $1 million today doesn't go as far as it used to. Back in 1980, $1 million could buy you the equivalent of about $3.6 million in today's money. So even if you reach 7 figures today, you're not living the same lifestyle as a millionaire back then, which is part of the reason why many people argue that $1 million isn't enough to retire comfortably. But here's the counterpoint. With smart planning, it's still more than enough for many households. Take the so-called 4% rule, a popular guideline in retirement planning. It says you can safely withdraw about 4% of your portfolio each year without running out of money. On a $1 million portfolio, that's $40,000 a year. Add Social Security into the mix, the average benefit is around $24,000 per year per person, and suddenly a retired couple with $1 million has about $88,000 per year to live on. That's not exactly scraping by. Of course, lifestyle and location matter a lot. $1 million goes a lot further in Ohio than in San Francisco. But the point is, millionaire status still carries real weight, even if inflation has dulled its shine. So, what's the takeaway for you? First, stop comparing yourself to the outliers. The people you see on Instagram who claim to be millionaires in their 20s or 30s, they're rare. They're the lottery winners of wealth building. If you're not there yet, that doesn't mean you failed. It means you're normal. Second, understand that wealth building is boring by design. It's not about picking the next hot stock or flipping NFTs. It's about time, patience, and consistent saving. The sooner you start, the better. But even if you're starting later, it's never too late to let compounding work in your favor. And third, be mindful of the difference between net worth millionaire and investable asset millionaire. If your wealth is all tied up in your home, you may technically be a millionaire, but you may not feel like one. That's why it's important to build wealth in liquid assets, those you can actually use when you need them. Here's a practical way to think about it. Becoming a millionaire is like running a marathon. Most people start the race too late, slow down when it gets tough, or quit altogether when they don't see immediate progress. The ones who finish aren't the fastest or flashiest. They're the steady runners who just keep moving forward. And remember this, wealth isn't only about hitting a number, it's about freedom. Freedom from stress, freedom to make choices, freedom to live life on your terms. Whether your number is $500,000, 1 million, or more, the real milestone is when money stops being the thing that controls you and starts being the tool that supports you. So the next time you hear someone casually say, "Oh, being a millionaire doesn't mean much anymore," take it with a grain of salt. For the overwhelming majority of households, it's still a huge achievement. And if you ever reach that mark, even if it's in your 60s, you'll know it wasn't luck, it wasn't hype, and it wasn't a shortcut. It was decades of steady effort finally paying off. So don't get discouraged by where you are today. Don't compare your starting line to someone else's finish line. Focus on your own snowball. Keep rolling it, keep pushing it, and trust that over time, it will grow bigger than you think. Because the real story of becoming a millionaire isn't about the age you get there. It's about the patience, discipline, and persistence that got you there in the first place.